long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, your father was born. And to have created you, the Force was with him. So we've all got that spiritual inheritance from our dads, often a complicated one. And literature's full of stories about fathers and their hero journey or their villain journey. We've seen so many of those stories, and we know people that have experienced both sides of the coin. And last week, Reverend Holly talked about Joseph Campbell's concept of the hero's journey and the resilience that the heroes on those journeys have to have or develop. Often it's a story of developing that resilience. And when she was talking about Star Wars and Luke Skywalker's hero's journey, I felt a disturbance in the Force. And oh goodness, I had a vision. And I know it was from Bob Jordan. He's implanting this image of me with a lightsaber, telling you, may the Force be with you. But really, has anybody not seen or heard of Star Wars and these concepts? I thought that might be the case. And if you hadn't, some of you haven't known Bob Jordan before he passed, he was with us from the beginning, pretty much, and well back into the old Losciuto Center days. And Bob was a very intellectual, intelligent man, quirky, especially in his ways of communicating, but boy, did he love literature and these hero stories, and he really loved Star Wars. And he really loved how it applied, some of those messages applied to our day-to-day life. Yes, Obi-Wan Kenobi, the great Jedi Knight, explains the Force, telling Luke in the first movie, or kind of technically the first, I don't know, you know how they messed him around like that, but anyway, Obi-Wan says, well, the Force is what gives a Jedi his power. It's an energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us and it penetrates us, and it binds the galaxy together. Now, when I was sitting in that movie theater in 1977, and I first heard him say that, my brain exploded. You know, it seemed like such a radical idea. And having been raised in a Christian Baptist household, it just, I don't know, should have seemed blasphemous or something, but boy, it felt so true. And today, this concept of us and everything being connected, being part of that big universal energy field, has pretty much been validated by science. We've talked about it here many times, how the subatomic particles that make up the atoms, that make up the cells of our bodies, are held together by an energy. Those electrons bouncing around, you know, to different frequencies all the time. And that energy surrounds us and penetrates us. So how could it not be with you? I mentioned difficult father relationships. And boy, Luke sure had a complicated relationship with his dad. Yeah, when Darth Vader, you know, at that point, the symbol of pure evil, breathed in his ominous voice, I can hear James Earl Jones, God rest his soul, I am your father. I about fell out of the seat. I did not see that one coming. No way. And then he proceeds to chop off Luke's arm with the lightsaber. But you know, these stories of difficult dad relationships are really common. I mean, Jesus is on the cry saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? To his dad. And I mean, God placed the sins of the world on his son. That's a pretty interesting relationship to have with your father. Now, one of George Lucas's biggest inspirations is something he doesn't talk about too often. George Lucas, the creator of Star Wars, the writer of Star Wars. The issue was a conflict he had with his father, George Sr. Turns out he ran an office supply store in Northern California and hoped his son would take over one day. Now, the young George preferred fantasy, adrenaline, and drag racing. Actually, his first movie had Ron Howard in it, and it was about drag racing in the 50s. I can't remember the name of it, but George says, I will never go to work every day doing the same thing day in and day out. That's what George Lucas told USA Today in 2008. So the theme of rejecting a father's wishes is embedded deeply in the Star Wars lexicon. So Luke refuses his father, he refuses to go to his father Darth Vader's side, the dark side. And then Anakin, in subsequent movies we find out Anakin was Luke's father. He becomes Darth Vader. Anakin rejected the Jedi way of his mentor, which ultimately takes him to the dark side. And then again in technically episode 6, Return of the Jedi, Anakin was reborn, basically, on his deathbed when he turned back to the light. The Darth Vader of him was gone. And that's when he got to start hanging out in the afterlife with Obi-Wan and Yoda and all those guys. You know, all the gang. All the light side gang that had passed through. And may the Force be with you sounds a lot like Lord be with you or peace be with you. And some of you might have heard those in other churches or other religious denominations. And the phrase, the Lord be with you, is first found actually in the book of Ruth. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem. And he said to the reapers, the Lord be with you. And they answered, the Lord bless you. That's in Ruth. And Catholics today, when I go to Catholic Mass, you know, there's a point during the liturgy where people turn to each other and say, peace be with you. Very similar. I think the term, may the Force be with you, has sort of evolved almost to being the same thing. And when I tell somebody, may the Force be with you, I do feel like I'm expressing that positive, loving God energy and hoping and wishing that on you, that person that I'm talking to. Now, George Lucas was raised in a Methodist family, so of course he heard these phrases somewhere along the way in those religious services. And so are those early Star Wars themes a metaphor? So I believe that the universality of the characters' experiences, hyperdrive notwithstanding, is really what kept us coming back for more. I mean, we've all experienced what those characters experienced, or we know people that have experienced those relationship issues. It's about those relationships. We didn't get to do the hyperdrive thing, but whatever. But in a world that feels heavy, when we feel like there's an anchor sometimes weighing on us, you know, we can lift that anchor off and be courageous. And it can help us. The concept of may the Force be with you can help us remember who we are. We're energetic emanations of God as we walk forward with compassion, conviction, and hope. And so on this Father's Day, may the Force be with all of you, whether you're a biological father or not, and whether you have a good relationship with your father or not. Just know that eventually it's all going to be resolved.